welcome to WION World is One. You're watching Gravitas with me, Hemkaur Saroya. Let's get started. A 1,000 days of death and destruction in Ukraine, and still there is no end in sight for the war. As Ukraine braces for another brutal winter, things only appear to be escalating further. Stay tuned for that report. Killer smog continues to grip the Indian capital. The capital is choking. We will bring you the latest on this in a few minutes as well. And then the situation in Manipur witnesses another flare-up. India's Home Minister Amit Shah chaired a high-level meet to review the security situation in Manipur. Stay tuned as we get you the latest on-the-ground situation. And also, has Tokyo become Asia's new sex tourism hub? Stay tuned to find out. It's been almost 3 years since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. It means the world has witnessed 1,000 days of death and destruction in Ukraine. Yet, even after all this time, the war shows no signs of ending. In fact, hostilities between Russia and Ukraine's Western supporters only seem to be getting closer to escalating into a full-blown world war. One of the biggest decisions made by Ukraine's primary supporter, outgoing US President Joe Biden, has been to allow Ukraine to strike Russia with long-range Western weapons. This decision crosses Putin's so-called red line. It comes after Biden had long ruled out such actions. Russia has already called it a significant escalation of the war. Question is, does Biden's decision bring the United States and Russia closer to direct conflict? Will it lead to World War III? Let's start with what happened today. According to a New York Times report, President Biden has authorized the first use of US-supplied long-range missiles by Ukraine for strikes inside Russia. The specific weapon in question, ATACMS or Army Tactical Missile Systems, a supersonic tactical ballistic missile owned by Lockheed Martin. According to the report, the long-range missile will be first used against Russian and North Korean troops fighting Ukrainian forces in Russia's Kursk region. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has said that the missiles would speak for themselves.
Today, there's a lot of talk in the media about us receiving permission for respective actions. But strikes are not carried out with words. Such things are not announced. Missiles will speak for themselves. They certainly will. Glory to Ukraine.
Now that's a bold assertion, but the biggest takeaway is the fact that Biden's decision is a major change in America's policy. I say this because for far too long, the Biden administration staunchly opposed this particular decision. Despite Ukraine's persistent request, this issue had split Biden's team right down the middle. So what prompted this drastic change? Several factors could be the reason for this shift. One, outgunned and outmanned on the battlefield, Ukraine has long demanded permission to use long-range weapons against Russia. Second, Biden made the decision just 2 months before leaving the White House because President-elect Donald Trump has vowed to curtail further American aid for Ukraine. And 3, Russia has deployed North Korean troops to boost its war effort in Kursk. Each of these factors could have influenced Biden's decision. But the pressing question is, in supporting Ukraine's demand for long-range weapons, has Biden inadvertently opened the door to a potential World War III? Because if the reports are true, the decision could significantly escalate the stakes in the war between Moscow and Kyiv. Remember, Russian President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly warned the West. He has said that any attacks on Russia's internationally recognized territory with American-supplied weaponry would be viewed as NATO interference directly in this conflict. Such actions, Putin has suggested, could lead to severe repercussions, including retaliation against Western interests. So how did the Kremlin react to the news? Just how you would expect it to. On Monday, the Kremlin said that any US decision to allow Ukraine to fire American missiles deep into Russia would mean it was directly involved in the war. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov accused Biden administration of escalating the conflict. Of course, the Kremlin spokesperson also noted that the reports were not based on any official statement, and so he maintains that if such a decision was indeed formulated, brought to Kyiv, then this is a qualitatively new round of tension, a qualitatively new situation from the point of view of America's involvement in this conflict.
Если такое решение действительно было сформулировано и доведено до киевского режима, то, конечно же, это качественно новый виток напряженности. И качественно новая ситуация с точки зрения вовлеченности Соединенных Штатов в этот конфликт.
On the 12th of September, Putin had last warned that Western approval for such a step would mean the direct involvement of NATO countries, the United States and European countries in the war in Ukraine, because NATO military infrastructure and personnel would have to be involved in the targeting and firing of the missiles. According to news agency Reuters, Kremlin is calling Biden's unconfirmed move as an extremely provocative one. Which brings us to the next question. Will this decision truly help Ukraine on the battlefield? Will it change the outcome of the war? War experts don't bet on it. You see, when Ukraine sent its soldiers across the border to seize a piece of Russian territory in Kursk, it marked the first time US weapons had been used on internationally recognized sovereign Russian soil since the war began. Russian officials repeatedly cautioned the West that it's playing with fire by probing the limits of what a nuclear power might or might not tolerate. Remember, Putin has also recently changed Russia's nuclear doctrine to say that any conventional attack on Russia aided by a nuclear power, such as the United States, could be considered to be a joint attack on Russia. Then in late October, Putin said his defense ministry was working on different ways to respond if the United States and its NATO allies helped Ukraine to strike deep within Russia with long-range Western missiles. Is Biden then testing Putin's red line? Has the US outgoing Biden administration just made matters worse? Has Biden plunged the world into a World War III scenario before leaving the White House? We'll have to wait and watch how Russia responds. Our next story is from India's national capital, New Delhi. Here too, residents are fighting a war for the right to breathe. Take a look at these visuals on your screen. Can you see anything? Because we can't. That's killer smog. For those of us living in Delhi and nearby, that's the air we are breathing. Delhi is choking, gasping, suffocating. But is anyone listening? Who is to be blamed for this? Who is responsible to fix this? The answer is as complex as the question.
I have a problem with all the dust getting into my eyes, and it's a problem for the body.
Who do you hold responsible?
See, both the Delhi government and the central government are responsible They keep on blaming each other.
Let's start with the data at hand. India's Pollution Control Authority said the National Capital Territory's 24-hour air quality index reading was at 484. That's classified as severe plus, the highest this year. According to Swiss group IQAir's live rankings, New Delhi was the most polluted city in the world with air quality at a hazardous level, 1,672 at 7 a.m. in the morning. The concentration of PM 2.5, that is fine particulate matter measuring 2.5 microns or less in diameter, that can be carried into lungs causing deadly diseases and cardiac issues, was 130.9 times the World Health Organization's recommended levels. Can you believe that? As Delhi's AQI worsens to severe plus, GRAP4 measures have been enforced. First implemented in 2017, this outlines anti-pollution actions based on the severity of air quality. These include tighter pollution controls, a truck entry ban, the suspension of public construction projects.
It's important to shut schools because even though the children's studies are important, health is equally important. If the students are healthy, they can catch up on studying. Earlier, there were conversations about moving classes online, especially for the younger students. The government will have to take some action, and the sooner they do it, the better it is for students and parents.
Now, many cannot afford air filters, nor do they have homes that they can effectively seal from the misery of foul-smelling air. For a majority of the people in Delhi, staying indoors is not an option.
We are facing a lot of difficulties. People are falling sick due to the pollution. We are wearing masks to protect ourselves, and now some schools are shut because of this.
Now, despite the polluted air, residents continue their daily routines. They have to. But why is Delhi air so bad? There are several reasons. The smog, which is a toxic blend of smoke and fog, it happens every year in winter. Cold air traps dust, emissions, smoke from illegal farm fires in some surrounding states. Farm fires where stubble left after harvesting crop is burned to clear fields have contributed as much as 40% of the pollution in Delhi. On Sunday, satellites detected 1,334 such events in 6 Indian states, the most in the last 4 days. What's more, overpopulation also contributes to higher pollution. More vehicles and more waste, it only adds to the problem. Many of the city's older vehicles release harmful gases, and construction work generates dust, especially in dry conditions. But it's not just Delhi. Other Indian cities also recorded varying AQI levels. Kolkata has an AQI of 222, which is poor. Ahmedabad's AQI was 144, that is moderate, while India's financial capital Mumbai recorded an AQI of 133, again moderate. Such is the situation that the Supreme Court of India pulled up authorities. The bench asked the authorities why GRAP3 was implemented 3 days after the AQI crossed the 300 mark. The Supreme Court said it will not allow scaling down of the preventive measures under stage 4, even if AQI goes below 450. The Supreme Court also ordered the Commission for Air Quality Management to take stringent action under stages 3 and 4 to combat pollution. The court emphasized that no discretion should be left to state authorities. For the unversed, this has a 4-step graded action response plan to tackle Delhi's bad air days. GRAP1 is invoked when the AQI is in the poor category. Under this category, water is periodically sprinkled on the roads, open burning of waste is banned, use of diesel generations is restricted. GRAP2 is enforced when AQI crosses the 300 mark, water is again sprinkled on the roads daily, uninterrupted power supply is ensured so that the use of generators can be avoided, parking charges are hiked to discourage private transport, and service of CNG and electric buses in metro are stepped up. The next stage, this is where AQI crosses 400, polluting vehicles, in Delhi and other cities in the National Capital Region are banned. Governments may take a call on online classes for primary students. Mining, stone crushing, construction or demolition activities are prohibited. The final stage, that is stage 4, it is currently in force. It kicks in when AQI crosses the 450 mark. Under this category, commercial vehicles registered outside Delhi are banned from entering the city. That is, unless they are EVs, CNG, or they can conform to BS6 norms. Decisions can also be taken on discontinuing physical classes for senior school students as well. Now, during this hearing, the Supreme Court reiterated the constitutional obligation to ensure citizens live in a pollution-free environment, mandating all necessary steps be taken by the government to normalize the situation. The court will review compliance with its orders during the next hearing. New Delhi's killer plague needs action. It needs stricter measures, traffic regulations, banning of polluting industries, better waste management, most of all, immediate government intervention. Until then, we'll continue to be breathless in Delhi. Is there a chance for peace in West Asia? Absolutely. Does that mean the truce is on the horizon? It doesn't look like it. Take a look at the visuals on your screen right now. What you are seeing are rockets flying from Lebanon towards northern Israel. Now take a look at these visuals. What you are seeing is a street in Beirut, Lebanon. These were stores, shops now left entirely charred. This morning, residents and business owners of Maralier Street woke up to scenes of burnt buildings and rubble. What caused it? An Israeli strike which hit the bustling central part of the city that has rarely been targeted.
At the time of the explosion, there was a lot of screaming. I mean, to the point that I could hear my little daughter, who is 7 years old, calling me dad, dad, dad. Because of the smoke, they could not breathe from above. I don't know how I went up. The gate that I was opening was on fire. It was burning. I don't know how I opened it. I went up and took them from among the rubble. Thank God it went well.
This is the new normal for Israel and Lebanon. Israel and Lebanon-based Hezbollah have been trading fire for over a year. For over a year, hostilities have caused death and devastation, yet a ceasefire remains elusive. On Sunday, an Israeli strike killed Hezbollah media chief Mohammad Afif as the group prepared response to a fresh ceasefire proposal. For years, Afif was the advisor to the late Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah. He took charge as the Hezbollah media chief in 2014. At the time of the strike, Afif was at the headquarters of the pro-Hezbollah Baath party. The Israeli strike hit a building in a densely populated district of Beirut. No evacuation warning was issued before the strike. An area known as Ras al-Naba was hit in the strike.
When the strike happened, everyone in the supermarket was terrified. My wife was also scared and terrified, and I told her it's normal. But honestly, it was terrifying. It was very terrifying. My family was here in the hotel, and my wife and I were in the supermarket buying some groceries.
With Sunday's strike, 5 strikes have hit targets inside Beirut city limits since 2006. That's when a 34-day armed conflict between Israel and Hezbollah took place. Afif was one of the few public faces of the group, after a massive Israeli infiltration operation drove the Iran-linked group deep underground. Afif often delivered speeches from news conferences amid the rubble in southern Beirut. It's one of the places heavily pounded by attacks since Israel began an offensive this year. Afif's death came at a time when Hezbollah is reviewing a US-Israeli ceasefire proposal that was submitted to the Lebanese government on Thursday. Will Afif's killing impact the negotiations? It's unclear at the moment, but Israel's targeting of Afif comes amid an escalation in its offensive in Lebanon. Last week, Israel's defense minister announced the expansion of the ground operation in southern Lebanon. Then on Sunday, Israel said that it was using artillery batteries inside Lebanese territory for the first time. Earlier, batteries had remained on Israeli soil as the IDF would fire at villages from its own soil. Currently, Israel is fighting a battle on multiple fronts. We've spoken about this. In Gaza, at least 50 people were killed in Israeli strikes on Beit Lahia on Sunday. Here, dozens of Palestinians displaced by the Israeli operation in the nearby Jabalia were sheltering. The Israeli strike hit the two houses sheltering them. We're talking about displaced people. Following the strike, people in the area started removing the dead from the rubble because there was no civil defense or ambulance. Gaza civil defense say they are unable to operate in the area due to the continuing Israeli strikes. Ask the IDF and they say that they are quote-unquote precisely operating and doing, again I'm quoting, everything possible to avoid causing harm to civilians. Remember, Israel launched a new military offensive on Jabalia in northern Gaza last month. This after Israeli intelligence reportedly indicated that Hamas was trying to rebuild its capabilities in the area. Israel's renewed offensive, it's once again displaced thousands of Palestinians, it's killed dozens. Israel's operation has also inflicted losses on its own military. Some 20 soldiers have reportedly been killed in northern Gaza since the operation began, including 4 last week. The continued offensive on Gaza coincides with Israel's expanding operation in southern Lebanon. On Friday night, Israeli forces reached the village of Chama, some 61 miles from the capital of Beirut. This is Israel's deepest incursion into southern Lebanese territory in the war. According to Lebanese state media, Israeli forces withdrew after clashing with Hezbollah. Lebanon's health ministry also reported that Israeli airstrikes on villages in the southern Tere district on Sunday killed at least 11 people. Let's shift our focus then. India's Union Home Minister Amit Shah convened a high-level meeting with senior officials in the national capital and assessed the security situation in Manipur. The central government will deploy an additional 50 companies of the Central Armed Police Forces in Manipur. Earlier, the Home Minister took stock of the situation in Manipur on Sunday after cutting short his election rallies in Maharashtra. Also, Manipur's Chief Minister Biren Singh is conducting a meeting along with BJP and ally MLAs. This after the situation in the state spiraled and a key ally pulled out of his government. On Sunday, Conrad Sangma's National People's Party, the second largest ally with 7 MLAs in the BJP-led NDA state government, withdrew its support to the ruling alliance, citing its failure to restore normalcy. The unrest in Manipur, which has been grappling with ethnic violence since May 2023, intensified after the recovery of bodies of women and children that sparked fresh protests. Hundreds of protesters, mainly women, hit the streets of Imphal. Some protesters also attacked the residences of 3 state ministers and 6 MLAs, including that of Chief Minister Biren Singh's son-in-law. Over 23 people were arrested for ransacking and setting fires to homes of the lawmakers and ministers. The state government imposed prohibitory orders in 5 districts for an indefinite period and suspended internet services in parts of the state. Protesters are demanding immediate action against the militants who they alleged had abducted the 6 women and children. Meanwhile, the National Investigation Agency, it's assumed responsibility for investigating 3 key cases linked to recent violence in the state, resulting in loss of lives and widespread disruption of public order. In response to the growing instability, the Union Home Ministry had issued the directive transferring these 3 cases from Manipur Police to the NIA, which will now lead the investigation into the circumstances surrounding the violence and its broader impact on peace and security in Manipur. All right, and then shifting our focus, the interim government in Bangladesh has completed 100 days. And in a speech marking the occasion, the chief advisor, Muhammad Yunus, urged the country for patience to prepare for fresh elections. But the interim leader did not give a time frame for the much-awaited polls. Yunus was appointed to lead the government as chief advisor on the 9th of August, days after a student-led uprising ended Sheikh Hasina's 15-year rule. He was tasked to create an atmosphere of political stability with the ultimate goal being fresh polls after electoral reforms. After completing 100 days in power, Yunus vowed an election commission will be formed, I'm quoting here, within a few days. But he could not give a timeline for elections. He said that it was dependent on a raft of election and constitutional reforms. Listen to this.
We want to establish an electoral system that can be followed for generations to come. This will save our country from recurring political crises. I'm asking you for the necessary time to achieve this. Once the decision on electoral reforms is finalized, you will soon get an election roadmap.
However, in another interview, Yunus said that the tenure of the interim government will be less than 4 years. Talking to Al Jazeera, the Nobel laureate said that the exact time frame for the interim government's tenure has not been determined, but it should be under 4 years, that's for sure. When asked that staying in power for 4 years would be the same as serving a full electoral term, Yunus responded that it was not his intention.
Attempts to spread unnecessary panic among religious minorities. In some cases, they were subjected to violence. However, the narratives surrounding these incidents were completely exaggerated. The few incidents of violence that did occur were primarily political in nature. But these incidents were given a religious facade to destabilize Bangladesh once again.
Now, the 100 days of the interim government has been marked by reports of attacks against minorities, including the Hindu community in the country. Hundreds of people marched in Bangladesh's capital last month to demand protections for Hindus and other minorities. Attacks have also been reported on Sufi shrines. The interim government has acknowledged the attacks but said in many cases they were motivated by politics rather than religion. In the recent interview, Yunus claimed most of these reports as propaganda and went on to blame India. Yunus has also said that his administration was focused on ensuring those guilty of cracking down on the protest to oust Hasina face justice. Bangladesh has also issued an arrest warrant for 77-year-old Hasina, who flew to India as crowds stormed her palace. Yunus said that Bangladesh will seek the extradition of Hasina, who is charged with crimes including massacres, killings, crimes against humanity.
Time, listeners.
Now, countries in West Europe are in the thick of a farmer protest crisis. Across countries considered some of the most prosperous in the world, tens of thousands of farmers set aside farm tools, mounted their tractors and took to the streets, up in tractors, so to speak. In France on Sunday and Monday, farmers blocked large stretches of arterial motorways near Paris. Protests resounded nationwide with gatherings at prefectures and traffic circles. They lit what they call fires of despair against a proposed EU deal with Mercosur countries in Latin America. Paris and Brussels have seen farmer protests going back weeks. Farmers feared a proposed EU-Mercosur free trade deal will lead to a surge of imports of South American farm products. They say it will harm local agriculture by introducing unfair competition.
En fait, c'est beaucoup le politique qui nous a mis.
We are linked with French agricultural production and we are defending it. And that is why on the Mercosur agreement, on the agricultural aspect of the Mercosur agreement, we find it that it makes no sense to go and sign contracts which are poorly negotiated and moreover which we negotiated without us.
This farmer unrest extends across Europe. Discontent is fueled mostly by anger with EU policies. Farmer unions have vowed to maintain pressure on the government to address their concerns. Reports say farmers have now lifted the blockade following French President Macron's opposition to the Mercosur deal. That is to be taken up at the G20. Farmer grievances in Europe extend way beyond cost of living. To free trade deals with other blocs, to new domestic taxes they consider harmful to their interests, to the EU sustainability policies and even the effects of the war in Ukraine. France, Belgium, Spain, Ireland, Germany, the UK, it's a growing list of countries all coming out with similar pictures of convoys of tractors clogging roads and ports. Farmer-led occupation of capital cities and even cows being herded into offices of government ministers. On Saturday, British farmers staged protests outside the Welsh Labour Party conference. No farmers, no food. That's their slogan, demanding appreciation for the role of the farmer and the food supply chain, Farmers Up in Tractors now has a global feel to it. There's anger over changes in the inheritance tax announced in the recent budget. Farmers say the measures threaten their farms and the UK's food security. Protests have also spiraled across much of Germany. Farmers are angry with phasing out of tax breaks on agricultural diesel. They say it would lead them to bankruptcy. And speaking of the UK, Keir Starmer government seems to be contemplating paying countries in return for a service. What's the service? Slowing migration to Britain. You heard that right. According to a report by The Times on Sunday, the Starmer government is believed to be in talks with 3 countries, Turkey, Vietnam and Iraq, about possible payments to regulate the inflow of migrants who are heading towards Britain. Let's break this down for you. As per reports, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer had apparently said that it was the right thing for Britain to dissuade people from leaving their home countries in the first place, since more often than not it involves crossing the Channel, which is a rather perilous journey. According to the Sunday Times, a British newspaper, Starmer's comments specifically came after his Home Secretary and UK's Immigration Minister Yvette Cooper was looking to emulate Italy's model of paying millions of pounds to countries in order to stop small boat crossings. And by doing so, Italy has reportedly managed to reduce the number of people crossing over into Italy by 62% in the first 7 months of this year. After Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni struck deals with Tunisia and Libya. However, government sources in the UK have reportedly rejected parallels with Meloni's approach, which drew criticism from humanitarian groups. As far as Cooper is concerned, she is understood to be in discussion with a number of governments, including Kurdistan, which is a semi-autonomous region of Iraq. What's more, Cooper is also expected to conclude cooperation and security agreements with these said countries, that's Turkey, Vietnam and Iraq, by the end of the year. This even as allies insisted that such deals were struck primarily for intelligence sharing and border security purposes and not as a measure to deter people from entering Britain altogether. You see, reports suggest thousands of migrants set off for the UK each year. There's been a steady rise in the number of people entering the country illegally in recent times, especially across the English Channel. In a bid to curb this, the Labour government had pledged to smash the gangs referring to those who run trade across the English Channel, including crimes such as human smuggling. In fact, only a few days back, the Dutch police arrested a man in Amsterdam on the 14th of November for allegedly smuggling migrants across the Channel. The man thought to be a major supplier of small boats and engines was nabbed in a joint operation involving Belgian, British and Dutch law enforcement. Following this, UK Prime Minister Starmer had hailed the arrest as an important move in tackling channel crossings. Listen to this.
This is a significant piece of the jigsaw. I'm not pretending it's the silver bullet. There are other steps that are going to be necessary, but this is a very important step.
Let's get you some numbers for better understanding of this issue. As per official data, statistics by the UK government, in 2022, a total of 45,755 people made this crossing, which, by the way, is the highest since 2018. In 2023, as a whole, 29,437 people came to the UK in small boats. In 2024, as of the 11th of November, 32,900 people have crossed the channel. These are just the number of people crossing the channel to come to the UK in small boats. But where do these people usually come from? According to the UK government, these are the top 5 nationalities for small boat crossings this year up until June: Afghans, Iranians, Vietnamese, Turkish and Syrians. Of course, some of these countries are known to be hotbeds of political and humanitarian conflicts, which made people flee and seek asylum in the UK in the first place. In fact, as per official data, in 2002, the number of annual applications for asylum, including dependents, peaked at about 103,000 as people fled conflicts in Afghanistan, Somalia and Iraq. While this year, just over 97,000 people sought asylum in the UK as up until the end of June 2024. Now, these are huge numbers we're talking about, and therefore these many people whose lives could potentially be impacted should Starmer's policy become a reality. Now, going by the reports, even as the Starmer government has pledged financial incentives for future asylum seekers, is limiting entry to the UK really a solution to the long-standing migration issue? We'll have to wait and see. Now, in the latest from the United States, Joe Biden visited the Amazon rainforest, which is the world's largest tropical rainforest, as part of his Brazil trip on Sunday. That's ahead of the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro. Not just that, he became the first sitting US president to ever visit the Amazon rainforest. Even as Biden's trip is being dubbed by many as quote-unquote historic, is it too little too late? Let's break this down for you. Now, on the 17th of November, President Joe Biden traveled from Peru, where he attended his last summit with Asia-Pacific leaders as the President of the United States, then headed to the city of Manaus in Brazil, the doorway to the Amazonian jungle, and from the looks of it, he had a pretty extensive itinerary. As per reports, first, Biden flew over the rainforest by helicopter to review the shallowing of Amazon waterways, post-prolonged drought, as well as inspect damage due to wildfires and deforestation. Second, he was due to visit a museum before meeting with indigenous and local leaders working to preserve the Amazon. Third, he was supposed to visit a wildlife refuge. What's more, Biden was joined by Carlos Nobre, a Nobel Prize-winning scientist and expert on the impact of climate change on the Amazon. In a nutshell, Biden made sure he covered as much as possible before vacating office next year. Is this enough? You see, Biden's climate policy boasts of progressive measures, including laws that reduce emissions, to conservation efforts, to green energy transition, you name it. This is also what the White House calls Biden's quote-unquote climate legacy. What's more, his successor, President-elect Donald Trump, on the other hand, has reportedly vowed to spur fossil fuel production and scale back Biden administration's efforts against climate change. This has kept climate advocates on their toes. In light of all of this, it was all the more imperative for Biden to address climate challenges more aggressively. What I am saying is Biden must have practiced what he preached, since climate action underscored Biden's presidency a great deal, and Amazon would have been a good place to start. So what took him so long to turn his focus to this side of the world? Moreover, talking about economic agenda, in 2023, Biden had promised to boost the Brazilian-administered Amazon fund by $500 million. But so far, Washington has managed to deliver on just a tenth of the amount which was committed previously. On Sunday, the White House confirmed a second $50 million payment was on track. That's what they've said. But Amazon, home to world's diverse and rarest biodiversity, needs more. You see, Amazon as we know it is almost about the size of Australia. It stores huge amounts of the world's carbon dioxide, which when released into the atmosphere causes unprecedented levels of warming. But having said that, the rainforest is also vulnerable to environmental degradation, and it is currently under threat, not just from climate change, but also from policymakers who refuse to do much about it. According to a recent study, the Amazon rainforest has lost an area about the size of Germany and France combined to deforestation just in the last 4 decades. Not just that, in the last 12 months, almost 6,288 square kilometers or 2,428 square miles of the forest was lost due to drought, wildfires and land clearing. As it stands to lose more if countries and leaders don't step up to protect the rainforest at all costs from the perils of climate change. Now, for decades, the trading floor, it's been a man's world, but that's rapidly changing. The glass ceiling is cracking, and women are not just entering the trading ring, they're changing the game. While the financial sector has long been dominated by male perspectives, women are now making their mark. They are bringing balance, insight, and a new set of skills to the fast-paced world of finance. Despite the progress, women remain underrepresented in leadership roles, especially in private equity and venture capital. In 2023 study by the International Finance Corporation reveals only 11% of senior investment professionals in the sector are women, particularly in emerging markets. This gender gap represents a missed opportunity, as companies with diverse teams consistently outperform their less diverse counterparts. Women's rise in trading, it's not just about equality, it's about enhancing performance. Studies show that gender-balanced teams in finance experience a 10 to 20% boost in profitability. Women are bringing a unique set of strengths to trading: emotional intelligence, analytical sharpness, a calm, calculated approach to risk-taking. They're not just better at managing stress, they are reaping the rewards of calculated decision-making under pressure. However, challenges remain. Biases, systemic barriers, lack of mentorship opportunities still persist. But as more women rise through the ranks and more companies embrace inclusivity, the trading floor is becoming a more welcoming space for all. The financial sector is evolving, and women aren't just breaking through the glass ceiling, they're helping reshape the entire industry. Let's shift our focus now. Has Tokyo become Asia's new sex tourism hub? I ask this because once celebrated for its economic boom and cultural influence, Japan has now faced a somber reality. Foreign men are flocking to Tokyo, drawn by its burgeoning sex trade, as economic hardships push local women into cycles of exploitation and despair. What does the rise in foreign clientele mean for Japan's vulnerable women? Has Japan's economic decline created fertile ground for a new wave of sex tourism? Yoshihide Tanaka, Secretary General of the Liaison Council Protecting Youths, offers a grim assessment. I'm quoting him here. Japan has become a poor country. He has described a landscape where young women populate parks waiting for potential customers. But why are foreign men arriving in droves? As per reports, this influx is linked to the lifting of pandemic-era travel restrictions. It is said that men come from all over, and alongside this surge, Japan has also witnessed a troubling increase in violence and desperation among women, many of them just teenagers. Why are young women turning to sex trade? Young women in search of a better life have increasingly found themselves in this web of sex trade, as the plunging economy makes it extremely hard for them to sustain themselves with just a day job, such as that of a barista maybe. And of course, the risks are incredibly high. Women have shared experiences where they themselves or someone they know has been attacked by customers. In quite a few cases, quibbling over the price of the services they offer has resulted in serious injury. Yet, when they report it, the police tend to focus on labeling the victim as a prostitute rather than pursuing the attacker. Such accounts underscore a chilling reality not just limited to Japan. Violence against these women goes unpunished, emboldening the predators. So what's driving this demand? What compels them to travel to Tokyo for such encounters? Is it the allure of anonymity, the weak yen, or a permissive system that fails to protect the vulnerable? And is there a way out? As per Yoshihiro Tanaka, he spent a decade witnessing the devastation wrought by the industry. Countless young women emerge from this physically and emotionally scarred, their futures uncertain, yet systemic inaction persists. As per those tracking these networks, the men know these girls won't go to the police, and so they think they can do anything and get away with it. And they do. As the web of sex tourism continues to grow, Tokyo's sex trade raises urgent questions. How did it come to this? And more importantly, who will take responsibility for the lives unraveling in its shadow? Why are women in Tokyo bearing such a disproportionate impact of a weakening economy? Starling is making significant strides towards its potential launch in India. Brainchild of Elon Musk, Starling claims to offer fast, cheap and reliable broadband service, especially in rural and remote areas where connectivity is limited or non-existent. However, a new report raises concerns regarding the potential security implications of allowing Starling to operate in India. A popular English expression, a wolf in sheep's clothing. The meaning of this phrase is a person with a pleasant and friendly appearance that hides the fact that they are indeed evil. Now, why am I using this idiom here? Well, this is what the foundation, that's a Delhi-based think tank, has described Starlink as. In a report titled Starlink, a wolf in sheep's clothing, the think tank has flagged certain security concerns regarding Starlink. The report majorly focuses on Starlink's alleged link to the US intelligence and military, and how this alleged tie could potentially lead to illegal snooping. In other words, the report claims that Starlink's entry into India could lead to illegal surveillance, data interception, potential threats to India's critical infrastructure. The report mentions Starlink's dual-use technology, which means the technology can be used for both civilian and military purposes, and how its operation is heavily influenced by American governmental interests, something that could prove to be a key national security risk for India. Moreover, the report also mentions Musk's influence on geopolitical events, from heavily endorsing Trump during the 2024 US election campaign to his refusal to activate Starlink for a Ukrainian military operation against Russia. Musk's influence, particularly in the realm of technology, has the potential to shape international relations and security dynamics. The agency warns that Starlink's connections highlight its potential as a geopolitical tool, allowing the United States to exert dominance in space and influence nations through its satellite internet reach. While the Indian government is cautious and insists on strict security compliance, the important question is, if these allegations are true, will the Indian government give in to Starlink's promise of improved network connectivity, or will they prohibit Starlink from entering India? It remains to be seen.